The Just Baseball Show is live. And as always, it is presented by BetMGM. Peter is going to give you the rundown of everything that they offer. But we got to catch up on what we might have missed over Thanksgiving week, right? Happy belated Thanksgiving. Happy belated Black Friday. Happy belated Cyber Monday, Small Business Saturday, whichever holidays you may be celebrating. Jack, Peter, Dylan Cease, Ryan Helsley on the docket. We also want to give a little bit of a preview of the winter meetings that begin in Orlando next week. And then we've got a couple of interesting things at the end of the show. I want to draw a cross-sport parallel, and you also had a horrendous travel go. But tell us a little bit more about our friends at BetMGM.
Yes, we are brought to you by BetMGM. Remember, folks, download BetMGM, whether that be on iOS or Android, and use promo code JustBaseball. Why? You get a first bet offer up to $1,500 back in bonus bets if your first wager loses. There are plenty of sports going on, especially at this time of the year. Unfortunately, no baseball, but we got other sports to bet on. And if you are interested, remember to use code JustBaseball, because if your first bet loses, you get it all back in bonus bets up to $1,500. Yes, this is a great episode to stay until the end because we're going to compare Lane Kiffin. We're going to do his MLB comp, and I just have a horrific traveling story that I got to break down.
The Lane Kiffin deal is one of the weirder situations that I think I've ever seen in sports, and I'm just fascinated by it. And I sat up late last night thinking, what does this situation remind me of? And I feel like I have a eureka moment as it pertains to Major League Baseball. Obviously, you have to add in the caveat, well, they got to leave before the biggest moment in the history of that franchise. So I certainly have that, but that is at the very end. I do want to start with the two guys that signed while we were away. We're going to get to Ryan Helsley signing his 2-year deal with the Baltimore Orioles a little bit later on in the program. But let's start with Dylan Cease. Dylan Cease is the newest member of the Toronto Blue Jays, and he signed for a lot of money, folks. 29 years old, going to be 30 years old on December 28th, so 30 for the entire year next year. But Dylan Cease just signed a 7-year, $210 million contract with the Toronto Blue Jays. We'll talk about what that means for the Blue Jays and what happens next for them, but I do want to start with Dylan Cease. Who is Toronto getting in Dylan Cease? Did this make a lot of sense? I guess knee-jerk reaction when this deal came across.
Knee-jerk reaction was, I'm a big Dylan Cease fan, and I'm still surprised he signed for $210 million. But if you do look at the contract, there are deferrals, right? So the present day value is about $26 million per year, which is certainly still a healthy chunk of change for a guy coming off an ERA at a 4.55. But there are plenty of reasons to believe that that ERA will not continue in Toronto. But right now we're looking at about 7 years, $182 million. So no, the Dodgers are not the only team giving out deferrals to big-time free agents.
So they also did this with Anthony Santander, right? You look at the total money that Santander got, and you say, wow, that's a lot of coin for a guy that had a really good year entering his free agent walk. But I mean, in real time and present value, it's not crazy because there are deferrals in that Santander deal. Even with the deferrals in this Dylan Cease deal, it can still feel a little crazy when you think about what this guy has done from an earned run perspective in his major league career. You feel like the $210 million pitcher, that was reserved for the top of the game, really, not just the top of the free agent market. And you can make the argument that Dylan Cease is the best pitcher available. I think a lot of people would. I feel like if you had to poll, the consensus would be that Dylan Cease is the number one pitcher that hit the open market this offseason. Some people could say Fromber. Some people could say maybe Ranger Suárez. People could say Tetsuya Imai. There are answers. Cease is probably the safest and best answer when his arsenal, when his body of work is not the safest and maybe not even the best. When you look at his ERA in his career, it's not as strong as a guy like Framber Valdez. When you look at the ebbs and flows of Dylan Cease, they're steeper than a Framber Valdez's. It feels volatile, but this is a $200 million pitcher. Did you think there was any world that Cease was getting $200 million?
My contract prediction had him about 6-year deal at $27 million. So it would have just come right under the $200 million threshold. But I want to bring up another quote that Andrew Friedman, the GM of the Dodgers, said back in 2016. If you are logical about every free agent, you will finish third on every free agent. And the Blue Jays felt that Dylan Cease was the perfect free agent for them. And I couldn't agree more. Number one, you talk about volatile. He is, right, up and down. But at his peak, he's finished top 5 in Cy Young voting twice over the last 4 seasons. And while the profile is volatile, what isn't is his ability to stick on the mound. There is a reason that since 2021, Dylan Cease leads all of Major League Baseball in strikeouts. He's number 1 at the top of the list because year in and year out, he makes 32 or 33 starts every single season. He's done it over the last 5 seasons. And even in the shortened COVID year, he made all 12 of his starts. So what you know that you're bringing in is a guy that is as durable as any pitcher in Major League Baseball. The only pitcher you can compare him to when it comes to durability is Jose Barrios or Kevin Gausman. The Blue Jays have one of the most durable rotations in baseball. And when you look at Dylan Cease's profile with the San Diego Padres last year and you see a 4.55 ERA, let me try to provide some context to that, because unfortunately, ERA does not capture everything that we look at when looking at a pitcher and projecting him long-term. And I think we can start at defense. Among pitchers, Dylan Cease last year, the defenders behind him compiled -7 outs above average. You don't even have to know what outs above average is. It's a defensive stat, and being in the negative is clearly not good. He actually had some of the worst defense behind his specific starts. So if you're looking at the Padres defense as a whole and you're saying, well, they weren't that bad, it's not about that. It's behind him. Another pitcher, and Mike Petriello just tweeted this out, Kevin Gausman behind him last year, +14 outs above average. So what you're doing is bringing in a guy who's extremely durable, has extremely good stuff, and some of the ERAs of the past have been inflated by really bad defense behind him. Now you put him with the Blue Jays, with one of the best defensive teams in Major League Baseball. And he's one of the younger guys. And I know that you're not his biggest fan, but I don't think anything that you could debate is that he doesn't have the best stuff of all of these starters. So I think what the Blue Jays are bringing in is the best stuff, the most durable, and a clear bounce back lane with much better defense.
I am a big fan of Dylan Cease. What I'm not a big fan of is the volatility, and how one year can look totally different than the other year, and how one start can look totally different than the other start. And I love the guy. He's an eccentric mind. He wears 84 because there are 84 asanas in yoga, which is like the poses, the positions in yoga. He loves disc golf. Like, there's so many quirks to Cease that I absolutely love, but I'm also risk averse. You are pro risk. You're all about it. You're a gambling man.
I'm a gambler.
Yeah, exactly. So like, I understand why you would like Cease, and I love Cease when he's on. When he finished second in Cy Young voting, I loved watching Dylan Cease because this guy is unbeatable at points. He threw a freaking no-hitter in Washington a couple years ago as a San Diego Padre. So there's a lot to like with Dylan Cease. I think the premier thing that you should really like with Dylan Cease, to your point, is the durability. And I look at the guys that are non-durable, or at least haven't proven durable yet in that Blue Jay rotation, and I love what they have there. Trey Savage is one of the brightest young pitchers in baseball. He proved that in October. He's one of the top pitching prospects in the game, according to our guy Aram Layton at justbaseball.com. Shane Bieber, coming off of Tommy John surgery, looked really good. Why can't he be better than the 3.57 ERA that he posted in his 7 starts with Toronto? There's so much to like with what Toronto has going. There are holes to plug, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. But I look at that starting rotation and I say, okay, there's no scheduled disadvantage. How often do we talk about that over the course of a baseball season? Is there a scheduled disadvantage where you're almost waving a white flag on a Tuesday because you're starting your 5, other team is starting their 1 or 2, all of a sudden, like, okay, yeah, we probably lose by 4 runs, but it's all right. Our starter gives up 5 runs in 5 innings. It's all right. That will not happen with the Toronto Blue Jays, and that is further bolstered by them adding Dylan Cease. We're going to get to what the Blue Jays have to do next in a moment. You're listening to the Just Baseball Show. Okay, so we just dissected Dylan Cease, 7 years, $210 million to the Toronto Blue Jays. On the Just Baseball Show, Jack McMullen, Peter Apple, we want to talk about what the Blue Jays have to do next. They are fishing in some crowded waters right now, which is a good thing because chances are you're getting a good fish if they're pretty populated. They are in the mix for Kyle Tucker. They're in the mix for some huge bats and arms still on this free agent market. Can they go sign a closer? Sure. Why not? Can they go sign a premier corner outfield bat? Sure. Why not? Do you feel like there's a slam dunk next step for the Blue Jays, or are there different avenues that they could go in?
There are definitely different avenues, but one thing I want to just continue on the Dylan Cease signing is I tweeted this out immediately. I love what the Blue Jays are doing because a lot of teams who would get to that level would become complacent right after. And think to themselves, well, we just got to the World Series. Let's collect a lot of the money that we made from ticket sales of food or parking or any of this stuff. And the owners get a little bit more of a payday. Nope. These Blue Jays owners said, we are going to put this money right back into the team. And the reason I wanted to bring that up is the Blue Jays still have more work to do. And I think it starts potentially with the outfield and DH position. And you say to yourself, what do you mean outfield to DH position? We just had George Springer be one of the best hitters in baseball last year. Anthony Santander is coming back. We have Dalton Varsho. Did you see Nathan Lucas in the playoffs? What are you talking about? You can still always add. And that's why I'm curious, actually, in our YouTube comments below, thank you to everybody joining us live on YouTube. Where would you want to start? Because Nathan Lucas, at the end of the day, is a 31-year-old with basically 1.5 seasons under his belt. He's been in baseball, or Major League Baseball, at least since he was 29 years old. This is not, some top prospect that just emerged like an Addison Barger. This is more of a journeyman player who had a really good year. Do we want to go with Nathan Lucas in left field again? Maybe, and I think it would be fine, but I think we could talk about other avenues. In right field with Anthony Santander, do we believe in a year two bounce back? Would we like to get some added, players at that position? Do we think that George Springer is going to replicate what he did last year? I think these are questions that the Blue Jays front office and even fans need to ask themselves. Is Ernie Clement going to be the same great player at second base, or do we need to make sure that we go get Bo Bichette again? So I would expect them to be in on Kyle Tucker still. I would expect them to be in, of course, on Bo Bichette, because we can't forget this ownership group has crazy money. Not Steve Cohen type money, but these are mega billionaires, some of the richest owners in sports. So if they want to go spend, they absolutely can, even though they already gave out $210 to Dylan Cease.
Obviously, they have Rogers Communications with the Rogers Center there as the ownership team. And it was funny. I tweeted something along the lines of, I quote tweeted Just Baseball's tweet about Dylan Cease signing his $210 million deal. And I just said, that is ... a lot of money. And Ben Schulman, who's doing a great job as a radio voice of the Blue Jays, said, upgrading my phone and internet right now to help. They have Canada. The Rogers have Canada. There's a lot of money there. There's a lot of free play, it seems like there. It seems like Bichette would be the slam dunk there. And then you're kind of playing with Ernie Clement as a utility piece. I like your idea of a power bat and maybe in the corner outfield. Like if they can go get Kyle Tucker, I'm all about them going to get Kyle Tucker. For me, I would prioritize 1A is Bichette. 1B would be a closer. How scary was Jeff Hoffman at points this year? And Hoffman turned it on at the end of their World Series run. He totally turned it on, and he put them in positions to possibly sneak the Fall Classic away from the Dodgers. But Hoffman was unpitchable at points. You found a consistent 8th inning guy or 7th inning guy in Varland. You found, I feel like, when best used, an 8th inning guy in Jeff Hoffman. You have another 7th inning guy in Sir Anthony Dominguez. Do you have that closer? If the answer is no, they're sitting out there right now. Do you
I
want to
agree.
pony up and pay Edwin Diaz? They got cash, to your point. Do you want to pony up and pay Devin Williams and give him a third year when other teams don't want to give him a third year on a bounce back? Do you want to pay Pete Fairbanks and see if he can lock down the ninth inning? There are options on the free agent market.
One more idea that I was thinking about with the Blue Jays that nobody has really talked about and is very unlikely to happen, but I love the idea of it. What about Alex Bregman? And what I mean by that is, if you're looking for a righty power bat, he can still hit for a ton of power. It might not, result in 40 home runs, but could result in 40 doubles. So you put Alex Bregman at third. You'd even bring back Bo Bichette and go more bargain hunting in the bullpen and go full bore into this offense. And you might say, well, what about Addison Barcia? Where do we put him? You put him in right field, and potentially you could put Anthony Santander in left. And if Santander continues to falter, you have Nathan Lucas right there. And I don't even think Bregman will be crazy expensive considering his age. It might be more of a high AAV type deal, depending on kind of what he's looking for in the open market. But to put another postseason performer in that lineup, that righty bat with that defense, which just kind of further emphasizes the theme that the Blue Jays are developing there in Toronto, I like a Bregman shout.
My thought is on Bregman. How many years is too many years for them? Because if Bregman wanted another 2-year deal at a ridiculously high AAV, he would have just opted into his Boston deal. But he didn't. He might be hunting a 5-year deal. Are you comfortable if you're Ross Atkins giving Alex Bregman, who's on the other side of 30, a 5-year deal?
I think I am. And I think it's one thing to decline that contract and go out and search for more. And it's another thing to get it. Pete Alonso did the same thing. And what happened? He goes back to the Mets. So maybe Bregman surveys the market and says, wow, there's not a ton for me. Why don't I just sign another 3-year, $40 million AAV type deal?
Sure.
And maybe I go to the rival because I don't like what the Red Sox were giving me. So I really like the fit for Bregman. I think bringing back Bichette should be priority number one. But if they want to go full bore into this offense, and the reason I bring it up, they got the money to do it. It's just, how bad do you want it?
I feel like my home run swing would probably be Tucker. And then I would pivot to Bichette, although I don't even want to call it a pivot. I feel like they have to choose. It's a Tucker or Bichette. It's not a Tucker and Bichette.
I agree.
If they do choose Bichette and want that reunion, I go Bichette and closer. If you go Tucker, I don't really care who's throwing the ninth inning because you're hoping you're up by 8 runs anyways. But I love the idea of retaining Bichette, bringing him back, the guy that grew up in your organization, and then going to a legit closing option. If they went Bichette and Edwin Diaz, I would be all over that Blue Jay offseason. It would be fantastic. Another team in the American League East is making moves. We're going to talk about that in a moment on the Just Baseball Show. The other team in the AL East making moves right now on the Just Baseball Show is the Baltimore Orioles. They acquired Taylor Ward. We talked about that last week. I want to say early last week. Taylor Ward, who's coming off a near 40-homer season with the Angels, is acquired for Grayson Rodriguez, the young, talented, but very injury-prone starting pitcher. After they acquire a power bat in the corner outfield in Ward, they go ahead and sign Ryan Helsley to a 2-year deal. Have you seen concrete reported money yet for Ryan Helsley? I don't think I have seen reported money for Helsley, but we do know that it's a 2-year deal with Baltimore.
Yeah, I have just seen 14 million per year, totaling $28 million. And it's interesting because the Orioles have been probably the busiest team of any so far in this offseason, because you already mentioned that they went and got Taylor Ward, but they also brought in Andrew Kittredge to this bullpen, and a smaller move like bringing in Leody Taveras to their outfield. And you got to give some credit here to Mike Elias, because he came out and said, I want a closer, I want a right-handed power bat, and I want to go get some starters. They got their closer in Ryan Helsley, and they also got another arm in Andrew Kittredge, who has been there before. But the thing is with the Orioles is they have to continue to add to this bullpen, because what happens when you trade bullpen arms away at deadlines? You don't have any left.
Yeah.
So right now, when you look at their projected bullpen, it's Helsley, it's Kittredge, And then what? Right? So we got to continue to add here. And this is what Mike Elias does best is he's able to create these bullpens almost out of thin air without spending really anything. So I have full faith that they can do that. In terms of starting pitching, I don't know exactly where they're going to go, but right now, what we can solidify with the bullpen, and we could talk about starting pitching on the next segment, but for right now, you get Ryan Helsley, who did struggle with the Mets, but I think his struggles have been a little bit overblown. With the Cardinals, he had a 3 ERA and the strikeout rate was right there. With the Mets, it all went kaplooey. And when you're a reliever and you pitch to a 7 ERA over 20 innings, that could mess up your entire season. And I'm sure he would have preferred to be a free agent back in 2024 when he was a little bit better, but still securing a contract like that, I think it's a good deal for both sides.
It seems like a good deal for both sides. And yeah, Spot officially populated with $14 million per for Ryan Helsley. So 2 for 28 for Helsley. There's a lot to like about Ryan Helsley, the guy. And we do want to talk in the next segment about what is next for the Baltimore Orioles. But it's cool. We've had the opportunity to talk to Helsley on this show. You have plenty of mutual friends with him. He played college summer ball out in Santa Barbara. So that's when you got to chat with Helsley for the first time. This guy fits the team whose vibe is like as unique as I think really any in baseball. When you think about the Baltimore Orioles, obviously you think about Gunnar Henderson, Adley Rutschman, Jackson Holliday, Jordan Westberg, the plethora of young bats that they have. You also think about how they're all really good friends. Like for some reason, it feels like the Oriole clubhouse dynamic among their core players, Colton Cowser included, is unique. Like they all live together during spring training. They love building Legos together. Like it's a lot of weird quirks like that. It seems like they're just adding a really good dude in Helsley into this clubhouse too. They may just be on the hunt for good dudes.
Yeah, Helsley's the man. We, growing up, he was staying at the home while he was playing summer ball with my best friend Dustin and played a lot of poker together. Always was super, super nice. And then we had him on the pod, super, super nice again. So the Orioles are getting another guy who's just going to fit right into the culture that they have. It's a no-brainer.
And oh, by the way, it's a career ERA under 3. I don't like playing the if you take this out game, but if you take out 2025, this guy's career ERA sits at 2.6, and that's with 12 appearances at a 5.5 in the COVID year in 2020 in there as well. He has Cy Young votes in 2 separate years. A closer for the St. Louis Cardinals. He's one of the more underappreciated closers in baseball. Now, he was treated like damaged goods because in his 22 appearances with the Mets, it was really bad, right? ERA north of 7 in 20 innings, allowed 25 hits. It was 16 earned runs, 20 runs in total. He punched out only 22 in 20 innings of work. But this guy, don't forget, was good with St. Louis before the deadline came. There's a reason the Mets had to pay a premium to go get Ryan Helsley. 36 appearances at a 3 ERA exactly, and he was punching out 10.5 guys per 9 innings. There wasn't anything in particular that jumped out about Helsley getting worse. The walk rate escalated a bit, but the velocity held, the shapes held. It was really location. So it was either, okay, you're out of the zone entirely and you're walking guys, or you're right down Broadway. That was the problem in his Mets tenure across those 2 months. His fastballs were right over the heart of the plate. His slider was over the heart of the plate. When he's at his best, it's typically fastball at the top, and from a pretty over-the-top release, it's a slider at the bottom of the zone, and that just wasn't happening for Ryan Helsley. So here's to hoping he can get back to it. Baltimore has been dealt a pretty bad hand with Felix Bautista. It looked like they had a top 5 reliever in Major League Baseball as their closer for the foreseeable future. And then it was an elbow issue, and then it was another issue. So Bautista is sidelined. They get their answer in Ryan Helsley. What does Baltimore do next? We're going to answer that question in a moment on the Just Baseball Show. All right, Just Baseball Show, as always, is presented by BetMGM. Jack McMullen, Peter Apple. We just talked about Dylan Cease, 7 years for $210 million to the Toronto Blue Jays. And we're talking about Ryan Helsley signing a 2-year, $28 million deal with the Baltimore Orioles. We've talked about Helsley, the player, his fit, what was going poorly in Queens, what can get better in Baltimore. Now I want to talk about what Baltimore can do next. And Peter, you made the point. Mike Elias told the media exactly what he was going to do. And apparently he wasn't bluffing. He's doing exactly what he wanted to do. He wanted to acquire a corner outfield bat. Yeah. Taylor Ward via trade. He wanted to get a closer. Yeah. 2 years for Helsley. And he wants a frontline starting pitcher. So assuming he's not bluffing on that, who's the best fit here?
Joe Ryan. I want to bring in Joe Ryan because I look currently at the Blue Jays roster and I see Kyle Bradish at the top, who is as talented of a pitcher as we have in Major League Baseball. That's how good he is when he's on. Google Kyle Bradish stats if you don't know much about him, and you will be floored because this guy prevents runs with the best of them. He's got fantastic stuff, and he improves year over year. What's his issue? Staying on the field. Trevor Rogers comes over in that trade, which looked like a bust of a trade as Kyle Stowers took the baseball world by storm, was an all-star, and you're wondering, we got Trevor Rogers, he's not pitching. And then he comes back, and he puts up an ERA below 2. And we were even joking around in our Discord, should Rogers get Cy Young votes with how good he was? If Nathan Eovaldi is up there, why not Rogers? Even though, it was only, I think it was even less than 100 innings. I'd have to relook it back up. But I know during the year, every single time Trevor Rogers stepped on the mound and afterwards, and we were reviewing it, I'm like, everyone pay attention right now. This is the best pitcher currently in Major League Baseball. He was pitching that well. But what's his big issue? Staying on the field. I can't have Dean Kramer leading in innings every single time out. You keep going. Tyler Wells, another guy who's got all the talent in the world, but hasn't stayed on the field. Ended off. Cade Povich. Talent. He's a rookie. He's still got a lot to prove. So I want to bring in a bona fide stud. And that is Joe Ryan of the Minnesota Twins. The thing is with Joe Ryan is every team would want Joe Ryan. Of course. But can you trade for them? The Orioles have the assets to do it, and he's not that expensive. It's the perfect fit.
So I like the idea of Joe Ryan and one more because you look at what's going on in that rotation. If they added 40% of the rotation instead of just 20% of the rotation, I'm all about that. And does that look like Tatsuya Imai? Does that look like Framber Valdez? I don't know. It could look like Ranger Suárez. I don't know. I see a lot of comments here saying Gallen. I think Gallen makes all the sense in the world. If you told me that you can go into 2026 adding Joe Ryan via trade and Zach Gallen via free agency, I'm all aboard the bird train or the bird bath. Can you be aboard a bird bath? I'm all over it, and I'm all aboard whatever it is to climb aboard. If they run out in a postseason series, a front three of Bradish, Ryan, and Gallen with Taylor Ward in that lineup and Helsley throwing the 9th inning, I'm all about what they have going on there.
There's a comment right here from Uncle Ted, and he says Merrill Kelly, and I think that's another great option because the pitcher that I want to bring in for the Orioles is a guy I feel really good about supplying consistent innings. We don't need top-end stuff. We have that if we trade for Joe Ryan. We have that in Kyle Bradish. We have that in Trevor Rogers. And I swear, even at his peak, Tyler Wells can look like that. Not as consistent. I wouldn't say it's top-end stuff, but he can pitch like a guy at the top of the rotation in spurts. So we already have top-end talent. I want someone, even if he gives up a few runs, to come in and give us 6 innings, 3-run ball. Give me a quality start. Eat innings. I want my bullpen to have a break here because there is no guarantee that all those guys that I named are going to stay healthy. History would tell us it's much more likely multiple of them get hurt. So I think Gallen is the perfect guy to bring in. He's not going to be very expensive. He has success against the American League East. You bring him in on a 2-3 year deal. Nothing crazy. You trade for Joe Ryan. You're not spending that money, but your team is a lot better. And even if Gallen is too expensive, because we're not talking about the Blue Jays or the Yankees or the Dodgers or the Mets or these teams with big payrolls. The Orioles want to save money. That's just, it is what it is. Their owners came out and said they wanted to spend more, but will they? Merrill Kelly is that perfect medium. Eat innings for cheap.
Yeah. Another option there. I see Chris Bassett just showed up in the YouTube comments as well. Like a Bassett makes a lot of sense there. I do also want to shout out how they can fill out the bullpen. And we'll save this obviously for a longer conversation on the Playing GM episodes, which are available wherever you get your podcasts. We get into that, I think, in earnest next week. Our content plan this week is obviously you're listening to this episode right now or watching on Sports Grid. Thank you very much for doing that. You've got an absolute banger that we are not going to divulge what we're doing right now for episode 1000, wherever you get your podcasts. And then we also have an international free agency preview where we're talking about guys like Imai and Murakami and Okamoto and Cody Ponce as well. You've got options there. But I do want to talk about how they can fill out that bullpen because, to your point, it's pretty light, right? After Helsley and Kittredge, who else you got because you traded everybody? There are plenty of bargain options. You want to give Luke Weaver $5 million? Sure. You want to give Emilio Pagan $9 million? Sure. There are ways that you can spend there to build out a really darn good bullpen. Even if you don't want to do that, how much is Steven Matz going to cost? How much is Luis Garcia going to cost? How about Tyler Kinley? How about Pierce Johnson? There are plenty of okay reliever names there that I'm totally fine seeing them throw the seventh inning. I just don't want them throwing the ninth, but that's why you just signed Helsley and got him off the board quickly.
Exactly. There's a million names that they could go put into their bullpen. And another names, a few names that we're going to talk about in the international free agency preview. There are guys coming over from the MPB and the KBO who have put up incredible reliever seasons over there, and maybe they'd be even cheaper, right? We just saw Elias bring over Tomoyuki Shigano last year. Kind of panned out.
But, I mean, he tried the Fujinami thing, too.
Exactly.
Like, he's tried that before.
They've been active in that market. So right now we're reading over MLB reliever free agents that are available, but Elias could totally dip into the international market. So there are so many options that they can go to. And again, that's where I trust Elias. What I get mad at Elias is just the lack of spending, and maybe that's ownership, who knows? But in this type of market where he's tasked to rebuild a bullpen, I have faith in him.
Yeah, I've got a lot of faith in him too. Baltimore has become incredibly intriguing. We got about 2 minutes left in this segment. I don't want to put you on the spot and ask you to give me the AL East power rankings right now, but who are the teams that you're most encouraged by right now? Because there's plenty to be excited about in Boston, right? You got a full year of Roman Anthony in that lineup. Plenty to be excited about in Toronto, obviously bringing in Cease. Who's your must-watch team in the AL East right now?
I think the AL East is just must watch. And, we got another YouTube comment. The AL East is a bloodbath. I couldn't agree with you more, Sean, because you're looking at these teams, and with the addition of Sonny Gray, you look at projections. Now the Red Sox have the second highest projected WAR of any rotation. The Blue Jays just add Dylan Cease and are coming off a World Series. The Orioles, we know how good they've been in the past and how young they are, and they almost have a blank slate right now to go get pieces, whether that be through trades or free agency. And the Yankees, if you look at those steamer projections on Fangraphs, highest projected WAR of any offense. And you know that they are going to be active in the free agent or trade market. They just haven't made a move other than bringing back Ryan Yarbrough, which it better not be their only move. And of course, extending Trent Grisham the qualifying offer. Unfortunately, the Rays have not made much noise, but we also know that the Rays are the best at doing and winning without much, right? So the AL East, it is shaping to be one of the best divisions in sports. That's how good it is.
I like that shout where you're looking at some of these gauntlets that the NFL has right now. The American League East can absolutely be in that conversation. Want to give you a little bit of a winter meetings preview because I feel like I have an idea of the next domino to fall. That's coming up in a moment. Just Baseball Show, Jack McMullen, Peter Apple. I told you that I had an idea what the next domino would be to fall at the winter meetings next week in Orlando. And I just have this hunch that it's going to be the starting pitching market. The starting pitching market is really going to get going. I feel like we've already set the standard. The bar has already been set with Cease going to Toronto for $200 million. So it's not like Framber Valdez would be waiting for something or Ranger would be waiting for something, but it's also not like they're looking at that and saying, well, I need 200 from another team. I think this is the opportunity for teams to approach a Ranger Suárez or a Framber Valdez or a Michael King or a Tetsuya Imai and say, listen, Top Dog just got $210 million. We're not going to give you that. So here's what we're going to give you. And this is where the offer will be presented. At least I feel like that is the case. I don't know if offers are already being presented to these guys, but I just feel like there's going to be a sense of urgency as it pertains to the starting pitchers at next week's winter meetings. Do you feel like there's another place that those could go? Or do you feel like the starting pitching market is going to be the one to kind of materialize?
I'm with you. I think it's the starting pitching market because the way we see markets materialize in free agency is a top end guy signs, and then those players who are currently free agents say, all right, that's what his value is. This is
So
now
here's
what
mine.
I'm at.
There's
Right?
something to calibrate
It's
off of. Yeah.
it's more solidified. Where in the hitters market, it's going to be hard for Cody Bellinger to sign before Kyle Tucker signs. It's
Yep.
going to be hard for, where does Bregman go before Bichette, right? So all of these guys, I feel like the winter meetings are to kind of figure out what a market could look like for those bats while we kind of already know what the market looks like for starting pitchers. And another report that we just got that I think is fascinating and
Yep.
certainly screws with the starting pitching market is this comes to us from Andrew Baggerly of The Athletic, who covers the Giants. He said the San Francisco Giants don't anticipate making the 9-figure investment to sign Tatsuya Imai or any of the other top starting pitchers on the market, according to club sources. Their current preference is to limit their spending to short-term deals. Now, I wonder if that is based on this current flock of free agents, or if it is a sign that the Giants just generally want to limit their spending. I think it's the first one.
Yeah.
I think they're basing it off of this current crop with Framber and Ranger and Michael King and Zach Gallen and all of the rest. And I understand why. There are a lot of things with all of these guys where you point and say, all right, we have an impending lockout in 2027. Do I want to give that guy 5 years, $140 million because Dylan Cease just got 210?
Right.
I'm sure there was a lot of GMs who agreed with your tweet, Jack. 210? Yeah. But that's the market we live in. So I'm sure some of these teams are getting scared off a little bit while also knowing if I have assets to go trade, Freddie Peralta's available, Joe Ryan's available, Mackenzie Gore is available. I think they might operate in that market.
The last thing that I feel like Buster Posey and plenty of other executives around Major League Baseball want to be doing in 2027 is sitting on their butts saying, I regret giving that guy $7 million or 7 years because there's a sweeping change happening with the contract structure in Major League Baseball. That's literally the last thing that I feel like a lot of execs want to do. Why would they burn cash for the sake of burning cash when they could save that and deploy it when they have closure? That's the biggest problem to me about this cycle is that there's no closure. You have no idea what's going to come from this possible lockout, or at least the next negotiation between Major League Baseball and the Players Association. You've got no clue. Would you sign up for, a mortgage when you have no idea what the housing market is going to look like in a year? If it's a surprise, okay, I understand, but it's not a surprise. Like there's this thundercloud hanging over everybody's head. So I don't blame San Francisco one bit. And I'm also not going to get on them because they've shown willingness to spend. They tried signing Carlos Correa. They tried signing Aaron Judge. They made a push for Shohei Ohtani. They gave Willy Adames $180 million. That was probably $30 million more than anybody else wanted to give him. I'm not going to fault him for this whatsoever. Do I think that they're the best fit for Imai? I do. Do I understand if they don't want to sign up for 6 years of Tetsuya Imai? I do. So why wouldn't you say, hey, Michael King, we're going to give you 2+1 and we're going to give you 27 a year. Hey, Zach Gallen, we're going to give you a 2-year deal at $60 million. That is, I feel like, the market that makes the most sense for San Francisco. So I'm totally with you.
Yeah, and it is interesting, though, to hear that report and then look at their projected starting rotation and say, all right, we got Webb and we got Robbie Ray, and then who?
Yeah.
So they have to add starting pitching, but if they're not willing to spend on these bigger names, maybe it is on 60, $80 million deals for, a Cody Ponce or someone like that, or maybe Zach Gallen isn't as expensive. They can still do a good job here. And it also, I think, sends a message to other teams where you ask yourself, if Buster Posey isn't comfortable giving them that money, but he was comfortable giving Rafael Devers and trading for him and doing all those things that you've already mentioned with their past GMs, do we need to take another look at this crop of free agents? And that's what I think these teams are going to do during the winter meetings, which is what could screw up this market. But still, I stand pretty tall in the fact that that will be the market to materialize earlier than the others.
Do you think San Francisco, like truth serum here, do you think San Francisco can compete in 2026 for a World Series? Not for a wild card berth, not for the Dodgers are just ahead of everybody when it comes to a division title, not for a postseason berth, not for a DS appearance. Like, do you think they can conceivably win a World Series in 26?
No. I think they can compete to make the playoffs, but as the roster is currently constructed, and that could change, right? We're talking on Monday, December 1st, right? Those things we could be talking about a new free agent that they end up signing. Maybe they are comfortable giving Kyle Tucker the money, right? But just not
Sure.
9-figure deals to these pitchers. So that could definitely change. But as currently constructed, no. And it really is a testament to the National League, because the National League, the Phillies and the Mets and the Braves are going to be better. The Cubs and the Brewers are still awesome. And then, of course, you have the Dodgers and the Diamondbacks. So they have a lot of competition.
They have a lot of competition, and that right there, I feel like answers our question, or at least validates our statement that it may not be worth giving the 7-year deal to somebody just to put you over the edge in 2026. Is there an edge to put yourself over? I have no idea, but it feels like the Giants are a couple of years away. Thankfully, they have Devers for the next decade. Thankfully, they have Adames for the next 6 years. They've got plenty of these guys moving forward. And if you wait a year, that's really not the end of the world. Got two pretty interesting last words in a moment. Just Baseball Show concludes next. Wrapping up the Just Baseball Show on Tuesday here. Jack McMullen and Peter Apple. I have a last word, and it's a cross-sport analogy, I guess, but you had a horrible Thanksgiving travel day on Saturday night, correct?
Absolute nightmare. So it starts with a normal flight out of Syracuse, New York. And if you've ever been to Syracuse, New York, you know that it is known for its snow and its blizzards and the very, very cold weather. We both went to that school, as did Aram. We are very familiar with that airport and with all the snow. So we get to the airport and we're waiting around there for a little bit. Looks like it's going to take off, but flight gets canceled. And we're looking at all of these other flights, and it doesn't look like anything is going to get out because the snow is supposed to be really bad. So we decide, how am I going to get back to Chicago? Let's drive. And it was earlier on in the day. You also get an hour because of the time change. We look on Google Maps and it says 9 hours away. And we say, all right, road trip. Not my best decision.
No.
So we get out on the road, and thankfully my fiance drives the first couple hours just so I can kind of just get some shut-eye before a very, very long drive. And she does, and, we're stopped kind of in Pennsylvania, and then we start the trek from Pennsylvania to Chicago. And Waze, we go on there because we need to know if there are cops or crashes, and it's a little bit better. No free ads, but free ad for Waze. It's much better. We're starting to drive, and the snow is starting to get really, really bad. And you're probably thinking, well, this isn't that great of a story. Some people have driven through snow. I want to make something clear. I have been living in New York City and Chicago since I was 22 years old. So I drive a few times a year. but I do consider myself a good driver, but I rarely drive. The last time I drove was from New York to Chicago in a semi truck, moving all of our stuff 3.5 months ago. So we start on this trek and we're going through Indiana and Ohio. And at this point, it is pitch black. We are in the middle of a winter storm. The car that we are using is consistently sliding across the roads. The brakes, good luck. And we're going 30, 40, 50 miles an hour for this entire trek. But the reason it was so terrifying was not only because there's almost no visibility, you got the snow coming at you and your headlights, but everything beyond that is pitch dark, because I can't emphasize this enough. We were in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Nowhere. But what was haunting about the entire thing is about every 20 to 30 minutes, we have to slow down and drive around accidents.
Yes.
And not just accidents with cops, nearly abandoned cars. We drove around a semi-truck that was fully tipped over with snow all over it and no people around it.
Yeah.
And that was a consistent thing for 9.5 hours after that original 3-4 hour run. So for actually, it was more like 10. For 10 straight hours, locked in, caffeine, 40 to 50 miles an hour, with barely any tread on the tires, in an area none of us have ever been, nor do we know anybody.
Yep.
Through Indiana, through Ohio, through Chicago, through Illinois, and then we get back. It was genuinely one of the hardest things that I've ever done in my entire life.
Welcome to a Midwest winter, and welcome to trying to drive on two-wheel drive in a Midwest winter. I have had to do that too many times, and it is probably the scariest thing that I have control of. Like, obviously, there are uncontrollables in your life that are terrifying, but in terms of something that I have legit control of, nothing freaks me out more than trying to get my Volkswagen Jetta through a Midwest snowstorm. So I entirely understand where you're at, and I'm sorry you had to deal with that.
Because it's one thing for you to be a good driver. You don't know all the other people driving through the snow, what they're going to do. You could be doing everything perfectly and someone just slides into you. And what was the scariest part about it? Nobody was around to help if it happened.
Yeah. No, that is the terrifying thing. So I'm glad you made it safe, Bubby. We've got about 70 seconds left here. I do want to, no, you're good. I do want to give you my last word. I've been fascinated by the whole Lane Kiffin deal. Lane Kiffin leaving Ole Miss in the midst of a playoff push. They are going to be in the college football playoff field. They're 11-1. He's going to take the LSU job. Is it a better job? Yes. Did he leave at the worst time? Yes. Is he an absolute villain in Oxford, Mississippi? Yes. But I was just thinking about my cross-sport comparison to the Lane Kiffin deal. For me, this is Craig Counsell taking the Cub job, but if he took it on October 1st, like that's my big thing. He jumps from the Brewers to the Cubs, which is a better job. You don't blame him. He's chasing the money, yada, yada, yada. But it's like if he took that job on October 1st and said, I still want to coach the Brewers in the postseason. No, get out, dude. Get out. Thank you, but leave. That's my Lane Kiffin thought. I think it's probably the closest thing. Counsell is probably the closest thing that we've seen to Lane, but the timing was literally worse than anything I've ever seen in sports in recent memory. So that's our program. Every link you need is in the episode description. For Peter, I'm Jack. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will talk to you guys very, very soon.